What's going on, guys? Welcome back into the channel. I apologize. This is another one of those videos where I tried streaming it and for some reason my audio wasn't recording. I don't know what the issue is, but we should be back up now with the audio in place. So today we are doing an update video on my last two videos, or well, not last two videos, but a couple of videos that we talked about before, where it was the importance of salary management to a young team, the importance of staggering contracts and everything like that. And so I wanted to bring you guys an update because a few of you guys had commented and said that you did want to see an update on whether I could re-sign all these players or not. And so I'm bringing you guys an update today to show you guys whether I was able to re-sign all these players or not. And so if you're not familiar with the situation, feel free to go back and watch those other couple videos. And we'll be able to actually kind of discuss some of those things. So I'm going to check this comment real quick first because I want to see if my audio is actually working or not, and then I'll be right back. Yes, thank you for the comment. I appreciate you letting me know that the audio is actually good now. I guess I just need to check my microphone before I do a video to actually make sure that it's connected properly. I don't know why it keeps disconnecting the way that it does. I have to unplug it from the there's like an amplifier thing that I have to plug in, so it seems to be a little bit wonky. But let's actually get into the update. Let's talk about, was I able to re-sign these players and what are the strategies that I used to actually be able to re-sign these players. So first things first, let's look at my player negotiation screen. And you guys will be able to notice a couple things from my player negotiation screen. So I do still have a couple players left to negotiate, and that would be Richard Sherman, Connor Williams, and then some lower end players that I'm not too concerned about. But the primary ones are not on this screen. And what that'll tell you first and foremost is that yes, I was able to renegotiate a contract with most of those players, and I shouldn't have too much of a problem moving forward. However, what you'll also notice is my amount of money that I have left. And so I have 17.5 mil in cap room for next year, and that's not including a contract for Connor Williams. So if I take away this 9 or 10 mil that I'm offering him, I would have roughly $28 million left in cap space for next season, which is a pretty healthy number considering all the players that I had to re-sign. And so I will probably still negotiate a contract with Connor Williams. I'm going to wait till the end of the season to see what Richard Sherman wants after he regresses and then negotiate a contract with him at that point, because right now he wants a lot of money, probably too much money for what his overall is actually worth. So, for the most part, I was able to re-sign these players, and I'm going to go show you in the salary table, and then we'll discuss some of the things that I did to actually be able to have the cap to do this. And so what you'll notice is Ed Oliver actually got a 5th-year option. So he's on a relatively cheap deal for what his overall is at only $14 million. But I was able to re-sign everybody else. I was able to re-sign Josh Allen for like $35 million average for a multi-year deal. Tremaine Edmonds for 18. Tre'Davious White for 14. And then it goes down from there. Singletary on what I think is a really nice contract, honestly, at roughly $8 million per year. And then we got Braden Smith locked up long term, and then we have a couple other ones down here. I believe one of the big ones was Cody Ford. We were able to bring back. He was a little bit more expensive at roughly $10 million per year, but there wasn't much we could do about it. And then we were able to get Tremont Smith back at $4 million per year. So for the fact that basically the entire team needed to be re-signed, we honestly did a really good job of being able to fit these guys into the budget, and we should be able to retain most of this talent as we move forward for multiple years. Now, let's talk about some of the things that I had to do to actually be able to manage that and be able to essentially have over $100 million in cap space to re-sign these guys. Because if you look at their contract values, I needed 14 mil for Oliver, I needed 35, I needed 18, Tre'Davious White 14, and you add them all up, and I needed over $100 million in cap space to be able to re-sign these guys. So first and foremost, I want to address the fact that I completely pretty much abstained from free agency. The only free agent signing that I had, which was actually a pretty big one, was Connor Williams, and I signed him to a 1-year contract, knowing that I needed to be able to negotiate with my contracts with everybody else first. And so I negotiated all those contracts, and now I'm down to the decision of whether or not I want to extend Connor Williams. And so I didn't extend didn't offer any contracts to people that would conflict with me being able to re-sign my players at their value. And so that's the first thing, is that I made sure that I didn't bring in anybody extra that could conflict with the amount of money I had to pay the players that I had in place. Now, the other thing that I think this video will be useful for you guys for is, if I go to the salaries tab, you guys should be able to get a good idea of what this type of player is worth. And so, you know, planning for your franchises, if you're looking at multi-year franchises where you have similar players, if you have a 90 plus overall quarterback, you're going to need $30 to $40 million per year free to be able to re-sign that player. Same thing with these other positions. You'll need roughly 20 mil for a really good middle linebacker, 14, 15, maybe more for a corner, you know, under 10 mil per year for a running back, which was really nice to see, and so on and so forth. Roughly 10 million per year for a good offensive lineman, maybe even more than that depending on what their overall is. And so really what you need to take away from this is the contract values for certain positions so that you can utilize this for your franchises moving forward, and just knowing the fact that you are going to need to game plan as you move forward. You're going to need to be able to have cap free to re-sign the players that you want to re-sign. And so, like I said, coming into this season, I knew that I needed to re-sign all these players, and I knew that I would need over $100 million to do so. So I took steps to do that. I prevented myself from overbidding on free agents. I didn't spend too much money on rookies or anything like that. And then in addition to that, I was able to trade away some players that didn't necessarily have bad contracts, but had lower value contracts for what I was trying to do. So a great example of that is, if you guys are familiar with the team at all from my prior videos, is I actually had Dion Dawkins playing right tackle. He was like a mid-80s player. Very good player, but he was on a somewhat high contract. I actually didn't want to get rid of him at all, but from a contract re-signing standpoint, he was the lowest value player compared to, you know, some of these other guys. I needed to bring these guys back, and I needed to bring back guys like Cody Ford because they're younger, higher overall, and I was able to draft linemen to replace Dion Dawkins anyway. So I was able to trade away Dion Dawkins and free up, you know, roughly $10 million in cap space just in that one deal alone. And I was able to free up some cap space with other players, and this is why you always want to be in your mind thinking for the future, because I don't sign players on contracts that I don't feel is valuable to me. So what I mean by that is, like Dion Dawkins, for example, I knew what his purpose was. He was never going to be a 90 overall offensive lineman. He was a plug and play, you know, low to mid 80 overall lineman, and so I wasn't going to pay him more money than he was worth, and I was certainly not going to pay him too high of a bonus, because I knew that eventually my team would surpass that and I would find a better player to take his spot, and I could then trade him away for cap space and not have a big cap penalty in doing so. So that was one of the big ones, is trading him away and finding players like that to trade away that could help you in the long term. And so if I look at my salary cap table, you also have to keep in mind that I'm going to have to sign Ed Oliver next year, so I'm going to need every bit of that $25 million that it said I had on the negotiation screen to be able to re-sign Ed Oliver, especially if he goes up at all this season. And so what I'm going to be looking to do this season, aside from re-signing all these players, is figuring out how I can fit Ed Oliver into the cap space for next season. And so I'm going to be reviewing all these contracts, and I'm going to be looking at, okay, these values make sense for 90 plus overall players, but then we compare it to some players where all of a sudden we start to jump down into the 80s here. Maybe these guys aren't worth as much money to me as their contracts are, and I could probably get away with maybe trading away a couple of these deals kind of in this mid-range in order to be able to bring back my 95 overall defensive end. So that's kind of what I did. You have to weigh the cost and benefit of everything. I would personally rather have these super high overall impact players, knowing that I can always draft well, I can always find free agents here and there to fill the gaps, and be able to supplement my roster, and knowing that it's so hard to find players like these that you need to keep them around. And so keeping these X factors super important, keeping these superstar players super important, and you need to be aware of your salary management situation, you know, what year everybody needs to be re-signed, and that'll make a big difference for you. But the update is, yes, as you guys could see, I was pretty much able to re-sign everybody, and I am currently in a couple negotiations with a couple other players, but none that are that big of a deal. Like Richard Sherman, yeah, he's kind of a big deal because he's a really good player for me, but I keep just extending him to one-year deals because I don't know when he's going to fall off a cliff, and being that he's an X Factor, he might not. He may also just retire, I don't know. So I'm just going to wait till the end of the season to negotiate his contract rather than, you know, blowing up my cap space that I'm going to need for Ed Oliver. And so right now, I have a few players that I really want to re-sign, and that's Richard Sherman, that's Connor Williams, and that's Dawson Knox. Those are the three players that I want to re-sign. But I'm going to have to consider between the three of them, how much space am I going to have left over next season to be able to re-sign Ed Oliver. So if I bring back Connor Williams on this contract value, I might not be able to bring back Ed Oliver because I only have $17.5 million. So you really, really need to plan these things. I can't stress it enough. You need to be able to manage your salary. You need to be able to look towards the future. And if you can do that properly, you're going to be in a situation like me where, you know, even if the world throws a curveball at you and every single player needs re-signed, you'll find a way to do it. You'll be able to do it. So hopefully this helps you guys out in some way. I know it's not a super long video or super informative video, but it is an update on a couple prior videos, and I know a couple people commented and said they wanted it. So if you did appreciate this update video, leave a like down below, comment as always anything that you guys want to see moving forward, and subscribe to the channel if you're new here. I'll see you guys in the next video.